for some of those lads there, if you're 23, 24, it might not be the end of your story as a pro. You still might get an opportunity. And I always believed, it's all right saying it in hindsight, but I'll be totally honest, I always believed I'll get a crack at full-time football. It took me a long time to get there. But if you've got the dedication, the belief, and most importantly, if you make sacrifices, you will get there.
Hello everyone, welcome down to another Lockdown 2 episode of more fabulous content. I know we're a bit biased, but it's fabulous. Talking about fabulous, we got the fabulous Jerry Gill with us today, who's a very special guest. He's a manager at Bath City with an amazing pedigree in football, both a professional and building a huge reputation at non-league with Bath City. So ladies and gentlemen, can I introduce you to Jerry Gill?
Thanks guys.
Welcome mate. So some of them, my background with you goes back an awful long time, doesn't it? Refereeing and obviously in working in business with Bath City. But can you tell our viewers a little bit about your very impressive pedigree as a footballer and coach?
Yeah, so delighted to be on first and foremost. So thanks for having me on. My career really as a player first and foremost done full cycle, which is quite nice really. I started at non-league football, playing for a little village team in the West Country. And then at 16 went to play for Beezer Homes team, Trowbridge Town. I then got moved to Leyton Orient, believe it or not, at the age of 16 and signed a first year pro. So you can imagine a young West Country boy coming from a village straight into London, into a council flat digs, signed by Frank Clark. That was an experience in itself. I lasted 18 months at Leyton Orient and never made a first team appearance, found it really difficult, was homesick, constantly on the phone to my mum, wanting to go back home. I remember the first week I'd had a new Ford Escort car and it was broken into in the first week in the car park.
Wasn't me.
So a lot of life experience as a young boy then in London, came back and then went into non-league football, Western-super-Mare, then sort of won the league at Western-super-Mare, which was a Great Mills Western League back in the day. Started working for a living as well, so back in the real world, and became a sales rep for a golf course equipment and sports amenities. And then went on to Bath City, where I'm now manager. So Bath City, 200 odd games sold in 1996 to Yeovil Town, which is like going from Birmingham to Aston Villa or from Newcastle to Sunderland, Nathan. It's just a no-no. And I'm still probably hated by the Bath City fans for doing it, even though I'm the manager. But I had my best year I could ever imagine in football. I was 26, really happy in my job, and ended up scoring 16 goals for Yeovil in that season. Selected for the England non-league team and played for England over in Ireland against Republic of Ireland and got my cap. And then quite a few teams then sort of wanted me on trial, Birmingham City being one. And we won the league, by the way. I think it's 104 points. We won the league that year. And then played 3 trial games for Birmingham City. Trevor Francis was manager. Mick Mills is assistant manager. And they came down to watch me in one game against Enfield where we had 9,000. And this is in the ISIS League, so it's one down from the GM Vauxhall Conference back in the day. And played with 3 games, and I got offered a 2-year contract at Birmingham City, which was at Trevor Francis' house at Wentworth Golf Club. So he'd invited me down there at his pretentious best in his back garden, telling me that Bruce Forsyth lived over there and Russ Abbott lived over there. So lots of experiences with that one. Had 5.5 really good years at Birmingham City. I loved it. A real good affinity with the fans. Played nearly 90 games for them. And played in some big ones as well, one being the Worthington Cup semi-final against Ipswich, where we got to the final against Liverpool, ironically. And then went on to play for Northampton, and then Cheltenham Town was my last professional club, and finished when I was nearly 39. So even though I started late in my career, I had a very long career, a career of 14 years in the professional game, and then came out and went into coaching. I've been in it now for nearly 10, 12 years, I think, over that. And coached at the elite level, the best you can get at under 18s and 23s, category 1 status. But really craved that 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon again. Missed it massively. And now this is my first job. I've been at Bath City for nearly 3 years as a first team manager, 2 years finishing the playoffs, and really developed the club and moved the club around, changed the philosophy quite dramatically, as Martin knows. And enjoying my time. So that's why I'm sorry it's a little bit long-winded, but my career is a little bit different to most players, and I'm really proud of the fact that I started in non-league and ended up still having a 14-year career in the game.
That's amazing. And you mentioned Liverpool as we were chatting away there. You know, Martin's a Liverpool fan, I'm a Liverpool fan, and I happen to know that your last game for Birmingham City was against Liverpool. At Anfield, tell us a little bit about that one.
Unbelievable. So I've supported Liverpool since I was 7, 1977. You two guys know why it would have been in 1977 for the European Cup final. So that was my first memory as a kid of any football team. So, and I have supported. I haven't just jumped on a bandwagon. Everyone knows that I've supported Liverpool through and through ever since. So imagine then at 32 being selected to play for Birmingham City in the FA Cup. We took 5,000 fans away Birmingham City that day. My dad being one of those fans. Wow. And to step out and to walk up those steps and touch, and I did, to touch This Is Anfield as an away player. I didn't care. I was touching it on the way up, and to walk up and see that level, when you come up those steps and see that level and then look to your right and see the Kop. Phenomenal. We lost the game 3-0. I don't care because I got to play at Anfield. I got to play against the likes of Michael Owen, Steven Gerrard, Nicolas Anelka. I got to get Nicolas Anelka's career back on track because he was struggling with confidence after that. And he ended up scoring 2 goals, and so did Michael Owen. I got a great picture of myself and Michael Owen with the Kop in the background, which is things that you can never take away. So yeah, that was my last game. I knew, if I'm being honest, I knew that was my last time for Birmingham City. As I said, I was 32. The legs were starting to go a little bit. We were on the clutch of really, Steve Bruce had taken over and we were close to going into the Premier League. And I knew I wasn't going to be a Premier League player at 32, even though we got promoted that season and I stayed till mid-season of the Premier League and then went on. But that was phenomenal that day. And like I say, really fortunate, but felt like I earned it in my career to get that day and that memory.
Absolutely phenomenal stuff. And like you say, it's for a journeyman like yourself to have that experience. We saw Marine play Tottenham last night in Crosby, and it's going to be the same for those bigger for those Marine players, because it's very unlikely they'll be able to get to the heights that you got to and play the teams regularly that you played. So to hear stories like that, it's really heartwarming stuff. And like you say, you thinking back to now, I guarantee will make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up and just be like, wow, I did that. I was there. What a phenomenal experience. What memories.
Absolutely. And for any I watched that game this day as a former non-league player, and now being in it as a manager. The feeling those boys would have been going through yesterday, the memories that I'll keep for the rest of their life are phenomenal. And you're right, it does stay with me. And I've coached in academy football, but there's no right and wrong. And I tell that to any individual, any young player now. For some of those lads there, if you're 23, 24, it might not be the end of your story as a pro. You still might get an opportunity. And I always believed, it's right saying it in hindsight, but I'll be totally honest, I always believed I'll get a crack at full-time football. It took me a long time to get there. But if you've got the dedication, the belief, and most importantly, if you make sacrifices, you will get there. I think that's true in any walk of life, whether you're a referee, whether you're a player or a manager. There's certain sacrifice you have to make to get there. And then with a little bit of luck, and that's made through hard work, you get there. And I like seeing that in my players now. I like looking at some of those individuals and think, do you know what, you've got an opportunity here. And it's great to be part of that and share my stories as well and show that it is possible to do.
One of the things I really picked up on right at the beginning of what you were saying was when you were talking about the difficulty that you had when you went to Leyton Orient, about the homesickness and that feeling of coming into a completely alien environment, which anybody who knows my story and is engaged with my stuff knows that although I didn't go to a football club, I moved to a massive city, totally different to where I'd grown up, and I had a real culture shock, and I struggled to adapt to that, and ended up coming back and setting up the third team as I've done now. So I can totally empathise with that, and I've heard so many others in the professional game. One of the ones that sticks out, which is a similar story to yours, is Craig Bellamy going from obviously Wales to Norwich. They're not round the corner, and and a completely different way of life for him, particularly with what he'd grown up with. And I know that, his wife and everybody was left at home when they were very young still. So I can totally get that. But, off air before we came on, we talked about the fact that you take a lot of loan players from Bath. So they've, a lot of people talk about protected environment within academies and things like that. And you take a lot of players from academies at Bath. Is that something that you're very sort of conscientious about in terms of looking after players and making sure that they're not feeling basically the way that you did when you went to Leyton Orient?
No, massive, absolutely. And that transition, in fact, I did a presentation on transition as a young 16-year-old going into a scholarship program, then becoming a pro at a club, but then coming out of a pro club and going on loan, there's not many, I don't read much on that. I don't see much on it. And in fact, I think it's such an important thing to make them feel comfortable when they come into our environment, but also challenge them as well. So it doesn't need to be like they're experiencing every day. Your towels are sat out on your bench, your kit's all ready for you. You get picked up in a bus and you're taken to the training ground, and your food's going to be there at 1 o'clock, and you can have some sports science support, some physio support, and even some psychological support now. It's important they get challenged as well, and that's what we give them. So when they come out to our environment, it's not saying it's not professional, because Martin, I tell you, I run it as professional as I possibly can, being part-time. But there is certain challenges they have to adhere to, and certain challenges that take them out of the comfort zone. But it's not to make them feel unwanted, isolated, lacking in confidence. All these things need to be supported, and we've got a really good multidisciplinary team as well. So I've got an assistant manager, I've got a sports scientist, I've got good physios, and they're all good people. And I think if your environment's about the people and how you set that environment, then people will come and flourish in it. And I like to think that the success we've had over the last 2.5 seasons has been from setting that philosophy. And people talk about philosophy as a playing style. It's not. A philosophy is actually your environment and how you set it. So again, in any walk of life, if you've got a business that the environment, people don't feel like they're comfortable coming in and expressing themselves, you probably won't get the best from them. So that's what we try and do at Bath City. We try and it's proven, because Bristol City is a prime example. They send us a lot of players, and they enjoy the fact that they know they're going to be playing in men's football, and we do things the right way. But also we'll look after them, and they feel comfortable and they get to flourish, and then they'll send us another one. So when we have people like Antoine Semenyo, who's now playing in the first team there, as a scholar we had him, they know the next one they can send to us and feel comfortable in the fact that they will get challenged, but also we'll look after them as well. So I think that's a massively important thing for the whole team, not for just those lads coming out of the FL clubs, because everyone's an individual and everyone's different, and your needs and requirements are different. So I might have someone who's a builder at the moment, who's working from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 at night, and then's got to come and train. You have to understand that. You have to spot it, not just physically, but mentally, how they're going to be strained and struggle. So I'm huge on individuals and making sure that everyone has their own needs and their own requirements.
Great stuff. I'd like to pick up on you mentioned your dad early on in there, and there's a great photograph of you. Your dad's talking over the terrace to you, isn't he? What a wonderful, wonderful program. And I'm sure he would have been beaming with pride when he seen you at Anfield. But there's a lot that you've achieved since you stopped playing with this Bath City way that you've ingrained into the club, and it's hopefully going to stem right down to the youth section. Some of the values that you're trying to play the football the right way, act the right way. It's a big part of your day-to-day game now, isn't it?
Well, it is. And you mentioned my dad, and I truly believe it's from the upbringing. We know sob stories because we've all come from different walks of life, and we all had different upbringings. But my dad was a lorry driver. My mum worked in a local bakery, cleaning trays. I started working there while I was waiting to go to college. So I'd get up at 5 a.m, cycle my mum to the next village and go and work in a local bakery just to get some money in. And my dad would struggle to pay bills, it'd be one of them. But one thing's for sure, he'd always support me in my football. So when I couldn't drive, my dad made sure we got there. So when I signed for Trowbridge Town at 16, my dad was taking me to Trowbridge Town, and that's over an hour to go and train on a Tuesday and Thursday night at 16 years of age. And without him doing that, I couldn't have played on a Saturday. And without that, I wouldn't have got to move to Leyton Orient. I probably wouldn't be where I am now. My dad still watches every single game that I'm involved in. And that picture, the picture Martin talks about, I think he's at Oxford City away, and my dad would always get there 2 hours before, so he'd often be there before the coach. And he loves what everyone's missing at the moment. He loves social interaction. So he loves going to talk to the stewards, the tea lady. He preferred me playing for Bath City and Yeovil than he did playing for Birmingham City, because at Birmingham City he was just a number in a stand. Whereas when he comes to the non-league games, he loves going around, and everyone knows my dad around the West Country. And so yeah, I think a lot's come from, in my values, my beliefs. I've taken bits from different managers. Steve Bruce being one, Nate, that I've taken some bits from. Other bits I've thrown away, which I didn't want from managers, but I've taken a lot from my dad. And what my dad instilled in me was that work ethic, and that attitude to every day, give it your best and try and achieve what you can. And like I said, my dad is extremely proud of me. I know that for a fact. And I'm proud of the fact that he can still come along and watch all my games, sit in the stand, and still have an opinion afterwards. I've still not had a great game with my dad, so I've always done all right. Always done all right. So if I've done all right, I know I've done pretty well. Like I said, he means a lot to me, my dad and my mum. My mum wasn't a football lady. She's still with dad, but she goes off on a Saturday afternoon, does her shopping, and dad's allowed to go to football. So it works pretty well, doesn't it?
I think a lot of referees will be able to engage with that and empathise with that listening to this, Jerry, because I think there's a lot of referees that, we talk about, and I've spoken about it before on this, when you get to see the interview at the eve of rally final that the RA does, for example, before the FA Cup final, there's always an interview there, and you always see that and you always think, right, okay, this is going to be an interesting thing, but 9 times out of 10, what the referees will talk about is the wives, the kids, the mothers and the fathers, and how all that support, because it's a very lonely place, and I'm sure you can appreciate that from the perspective of when a referee makes a decision that you don't agree with, you're obviously very upset, the fans are very upset, the players are very upset, and actually probably the referee's very upset because he wants to get absolutely everything right, but he's a human being and it's not possible.
Yeah. No, I think, and listen, I'm guilty of it as much as anyone, and I try to be as thoughtful and as respectful as I possibly can as a manager on the side, but we all get caught up in the emotion of the game. And what sometimes I probably don't reflect on enough is that individual as a referee and how they're feeling post-game. I know we're going to go on and talk about some examples about how I like personalities in people, I like personalities in referees especially, and I find it difficult with the referees and officials that don't want to talk to you and don't want to communicate. I think that's the biggest problem I have as a manager, is if on any given time on a pitch there, the best ones whenever I've been playing is the ones that have been in my ear all the time for 90 minutes, whether that's good or bad. And I think as an official, to get away from being as robotic as you possibly can and trying to be a human being and being an individual and having a character in a game, I think that'll help you more than the other way.
It's fascinating that you say that, because in my opinion, this is not a kind of blanket a kind of view that a lot of people have, but I feel as though the FA are trying to create robot referees at the moment. Now, if you're a new referee and you're very green and you don't have the experience to like communicate and chat and throw a bit of banter with players and managers and stuff, that's fine, I get that. But even with observers and the feedback that they give, they almost not discourage that amount of communication that you as a manager want from a match official. But there is, again, my opinion, that the FA are trying to create these robot referees that are very, they don't, back at, let's go, say, 15 to 20 years back, and the referees, you could tell which ones had the personality, which ones were a bit strict, which ones had the banter. You compare your Steve Bennett's with your Graham Poles, those sort of eras of referees. And one of the big criticisms now is that the referees are all robots. You can't tell the personality of a referee in a Premier League game. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, if you go on social media, you'll get the public's opinion is that it's a bad thing. And speaking to you as a manager, you want the communication. So what would you suggest the FA do in terms of how they develop and generate the next generation of referees?
Well, it's interesting because I had this thing with coaches not so long ago as well. So we all know about St George's Park, and we all know it's a great hub for all of us as coaches or young coaches now aspiring to be a manager or a coach in the game. But my issue was that the England DNA was brought out, and all these coaches were being bussed off to St George's Park, and all the coaches were working off the England DNA. So it became robotic. So when coaches were going back into football clubs at any given age group, they were coaching an England DNA way, when all these individual clubs have got their own coaching and playing styles and philosophies, yet you were seeing coaches very much the same. So they were going out and you were seeing them, all the sessions would look similar, and their personality and their body language would be very similar. And I think that was is still a big issue in the game, because they're wanting just to throw out A licenses. Go on, you've got an A license, go out. Whereas when I went back in the day when I was doing my coaching badges, I was put up against in a remote, I think it was Oxford City again, a remote centre. You had 11 players. The FA guy's got 11 players. He's now going to play against you in a game, and he's going to cause you issues and problems tactically within the game for you to spot and play against. Well, look at the pressure under that. So you've got to be your own. You've got to be your own coach. You've got to be your own manager. You've got to try and manage those players accordingly within that game. And I didn't know them, so those players were just given to me on a given day. So on a match day, an official's given 22 players. Me and Martin spoke about this, and I believe in this as well. I think before a game, if I was an official, I'd do everything I possibly can to find out about what the managers are going to be like, what the playing styles are going to be like, what the players may be like. So I'd maybe pick 2 or 3 experienced players on each team and say, right, okay, there's one. I know what he's maybe going to be like. I think instantly then you're going to be able to build up some sort of picture before you turn up at a game. And that will help you managing that game rather than just turning up cold and not knowing what you're going into, because it's a lion's den. You're going into, especially now at the moment we're in a culture where there's no fans in grounds. This squealing and screaming culture suddenly come out from players. You've seen it at the top level, and you see it at our level every week. Managers and coaches are all going up on the side. And I found myself even the other day at Chippenham in a local derby. I turned around to the manager and said, is this how it's going to be? Because they were appealing from first whistle. So that pressure on that official is massive, it's huge. And it's hard not to react to that, to a player squealing and screaming and a bench going up at the same time. So they need all the help they can get. And I think it works both ways. Don't get me wrong, I think it works both ways. But I think that tool, if I'm an official, to do a little bit of research, you don't need to do reams of it, do a little bit of research, maybe watch back a Bath City game before, or whoever else it is. And that might help you, because they're part-time like I am, and they go away from it, they're not going to get the coaching, they're not going to get the help and support the top level, I should imagine, that officials were going to get.
No, we don't, mate. And this is going to bring us in lovely, because we're going to show a clip of one of your recent games where it looks like there was a decision that wasn't given right, quite a crucial part of the game, and we'll discuss it. Okay, Jerry, so here's the clip we talked about, which we looked at the scores 2-0 at this point. 50 minutes gone on the game. There's a corner. What you thinking on this corner?
Well, so as you know, we do, and in the modern game, set pieces are so vital now, so important at any level. And we're 2-0 down in the game, but actually we're in the ascendancy, and at Bath City, that's going towards the Bath end, down the slope. We've dominated the game to start, but they've scored 2 early goals in the game, and we're up against it a little bit. But this is a corner routine that we practice and we pay a lot of attention to, and it means a lot to us, because when they do come off, and it's very seldom they do, and rare they do, there's certainly times like this, 2-1, 15 minutes gone, we suddenly will get some momentum. So as you can see, Ryan Harley's back to take it. It looks like he's going to take it with his left foot, and he does in the end, but we do one where he switches around, takes it with his right. But if you see the player on the goal line against the goalkeeper, he's going to run out along the byline in front of the defensive player. And as he does that, he will pick the ball up. He will then drive up the pitch, and he'll put his foot on the ball. And as he does that, Ryan Harley will then run adjacent along, that's the corner taker, along the line, keeping himself onside, to then play a ball which he'll dink into the box, where we see Tom Smith by the referee make a third man run and score. The bits to look out for, obviously we're trying to make sure we're not going offside, because Ryan Harley's position, from when he takes the corner, he's quite deep in the pitch. But if you watch him, he sort of delays his run, and we knew it at the time. There was a player on the back post, and you see the red player on the back post, and he's really late in coming out. In fact, he doesn't come out. He ends up still in the middle of the 6-yard box. The official lineswoman, she raises her flag. Really, what you can't see in this is, so the commentator will talk about it, she puts her flag up almost immediately. So once Tommy Conway, who picks the ball up, who comes out from the goalkeeper, once he puts his foot on the ball and plays it backwards, the flag goes up immediately. Well, we'll see in the clips after that is, by doing it that early, it hasn't given her time to look at that player who comes late off the post. So I think the offside's given off of Ryan Harley with the defensive line, apart from the one on the back post.
Right, let's have a look at the clip then.
Harley takes this short to Mayhew. In by Harley. Chance for Tom Smith, and he scores! But the flag has been raised by Stacey Ford on that right-hand side. She put her flag up very, very quickly. I'm not actually too sure what this has actually been given for, unless...
What was the feeling from the technical area at this stage?
So in real time, as you can see there, and we've got some freeze frames in a minute, which is good. But I always go off player reaction as well. And if you look at our players, they're sort of like amazed. And the main one is Ryan Harley is now walking across, and Tommy Conway towards the official Ross, and saying it's impossible because I'm looking along the line. So in real time, I know pretty much. I can see because I spotted the back post. So I always look there because I think if there is someone on the back post, he's going to have to do a lot of work to get out to play them offside, and he hasn't. So first thing is player reaction. You're looking at them; they're like talking amongst each other, going, "Well, we're pretty lucky we've got away with that one." You can see in their little group, and then one sort of goes over and claps the officials if to say, "Well done for spotting it," when we all know really it wasn't. And as you can see now, sort of going through, there's a couple of lines drawn, and you'll spot the player on the far post, and I think that's the one to look at really in the next frame.
The man who came for the short corner, Mayhew, was offside himself. I'm scratching my head at that one, to be honest. I think Joe might be able to help me out on that one.
He has been given for offside. I'm assuming it's for Ryan Harley, because there's no way Mayhew could have been offside from a corner being taken.
You can see the player who's coming, still trying to come off the back post, who's now in the middle of the 6-yard box, 4 yards out, 4 yards out. Even the player across, so there's a deeper line one going over towards Ryan. Arguably, Ryan looks onside on that one as well. So I think she's seen it too early. I spotted it too early and not given her time to delay, and you can have a little look through again.
Well, to be honest, I think Joe might be able to help me out. The man who came for the short corner, Mayhew, was offside himself. I'm scratching my head at that one, to be honest. I think Joe might be able to help me out on that one.
He has been given for offside. I'm assuming it's for Ryan Harley, because there's no way Mayhew could have been offside from a corner being taken.
If we just pull it back here, though, we've talked about this. We've talked about this before. I think it's just before here. We've talked about this before on this podcast here, which you obviously touched upon. It's just here now. So if you just look at this player here in the middle area here, you can just see that, which is what you mentioned there, a little applause. So there's a little applause there, and I think it's a great point that you make there, Jerry, because we've spoken about this before. We did analysis of another clip during the lockdown in November. And I think that you're quite right there in saying that when they give that little applause or they come and congratulate the referee or something like that, it's usually because they know they've either got away with a bad tackle, so maybe they've seen a yellow card instead of a red, or something like that. And I think that things like that are very, very telling in situations such as this.
Yeah, and listen, again, we said from the outset, all human beings, I totally get it. And my issue then post, so a mistake's been, in my opinion, a mistake's been made by the lineswoman. It's the bit after that. So I said to Ross coming off, or if I'm the lineswoman, am I am I now thinking, right, I don't want to admit a mistake, or do I want to admit a mistake? So by admitting a mistake, I would keep don't tell me if I'm wrong, I would keep my flag raised and I'd get Ross over and I'd call him over and say, Ross, I think I've made a mistake because I've now seen there's a player come off the back post that may have played him on, that I think's played him on. Can you please take this out of my hands now and make a decision as a referee and say you've overruled me because I have got it wrong, and you can say, I've seen the guy on the far post, it's impossible that he could be offside.
I'd be interested to see what Martin and Ant's take on this. And I know there's no crowd in, what I'm about to say is something you'd probably definitely do if there was a crowd in. But what I'd probably look to do is not raise the flag, but to actually just stand my ground. So players are going back in for a restart of play, kick-off, but I would just stand my ground. And I think that if Ross, the referee, is looking over it, I believe the assistant was called Casey, wasn't she? If he looks across and sees that she's standing her ground, he's then going to think something's not quite right here. She might even give him a little signal just to come over. And I think coming over then, they can have a full and informed discussion. They haven't inflamed any crowd if there was a crowd, but they also haven't inflamed any of the players. So it means that if something is about to happen, you're not going to get 22 players or however many it would be crowding around the referee when a decision needs to be made. And I think that that's probably the most common sense thing to do in that situation, because it allows you a bit of time. Maybe nobody's necessarily paying attention to it and they can make an informed decision, without that kind of pressure of having stuck a flag up and made a big decision. Yeah,
I'll propose one of two scenarios. One, as the commentator says, that flag went up very, very quickly. Play continued, a goal was scored. If you're the assistant and you know you've made a mistake, as Nathan said, I'd keep the flag down, but I'd be buzzing the arm off that referee. Yeah. I'd be buzzing, and call him over and explain that I got the flag up too quick, play continued. Because the flag went up that quick, and it was, with the lines on after, I think it's fairly safe to say it was an assistant referee mistake. It's quite clear that you did have the player on the back post there, and the assistant did make a mistake. If the assistant realises that's the way to rectify it from the assistant, the way that Nathan said, if it's the other way around, if you as the referee in the middle think that your assistant has made a mistake but not realised, the players are obviously coming over and having a chat with the referee. The referee at that point will say to them, yeah, okay, I suspect something, but I'm going to go and talk to the assistant. And I wouldn't say to the assistant, do you think that was offside? Because I think the assistant will say, well, yeah, that's why I put my flag up. Yeah. I'd say, I think I've seen this. What do you think you saw? And get them to explain the scenario as they saw it through their eyes. Now, with offsides, I instruct my assistants, offside is 100% you, unless you're wrong in law or for whatever reason I spot something that it's blatantly not offside and you've made a mistake. Yeah. So if they're 100% sure that it's offside and they're sure they haven't made a mistake, and when they rehash the situation as they've seen and they still think it's offside, I would have to then stick with my assistant's decision. Those would be my pre-match instructions. So those two scenarios, whether the assistant thinks they're right or the referee thinks that a mistake has been made, those are the two ways that I'd seek to rectify it. But Martin, if you want to jump in with your...
Yeah, there's a few learnings here first. Just at the beginning of the kick-off, it's wise to look at what foot the ball's getting delivered to it. We've talked about it in the past. Jerry alluded to it. Sometimes, you can see where the ball's going to go, depending on what foot you're going to deliver it. Sometimes they disguise that and then take it with the right. So that's a good learning point for all referees at all levels, is just pay attention to how the ball's being delivered and what foot you're using with. Interestingly, before we go on to the systems, where the referee here is what's he looking at there?
He's looking for potential penalty.
Well, he looks like he's looking at the player with the ball in the corner flag, doesn't he?
Yeah.
In this actual still clip, he's looking towards the kick of the ball, isn't he? What do you need to look at there for? So maybe that might give you an indication, as a referee, do you really need to look at that player taking the flight of the ball like that? Sometimes you can just open your body up and you've got to in the peripheral view of you as a referee, so that you're actually looking at everything that's going on in the box. You might be able to see that delayed runner. You might be able to see a player getting taken out. So that's two little tiny learnings there. But on regards to the assistant referee, Jerry said woman assistant referee, whatever. I don't think, not that I'm throwing you under the bus here, but it's irrelevant if it's a woman or not. It's just an assistant referee. Yeah. And some people will pull us up on that and say assistant lines woman or whatever. So just well,
the reason I said that, because on Twitter, I put this on Twitter just to get some opinion, and it wasn't a witch hunt by no means.
No, I know.
And I think there's that much confusion anyway now when the game changes. Is it assistant referees, lineswomen, linesmen?
Yeah. Yeah,
and that's just an honest thing that
I agree, mate. That's I just want to flash it up. That it's just an assistant referee, whether it's a woman, a man, or a horse. It doesn't really matter. So on that point, but it does look like she's gone up there too quickly. Now going on the once you've committed to that, you've got to stand by your decision. You've got to keep your flag up. If you then think, oh God, I didn't see that lad in a near post, I think you've got to keep your flag up and call him over either with a buzz or a verbal communication. Come on over. I need to have a word. And if she stood there and said, "Look, Ross, I did put up for offside, but I realised that player's come out," I think everyone's going to win from that. She'll still get stick from the defence. Oh, get your flags up, blah blah blah. But it still gives you enough time before plays restarted to change that decision. And I think the learning there is that the fact that just take your time with the flag you have got. You'd be very surprised at how long you've got on decision making with flags. An early flag is normally a wrong flag, will be a really good way of viewing this. Now, interestingly, one of the things I talked to Jerry about, which he wasn't aware of, is the lack of training assistant referees get. And we can't blame, there's no one to blame here. Like Jerry wouldn't blame one of his players for missing a pen or a sitter. This isn't about blame. This is about avenues for clubs when they have got an issue they want to talk about with the FA, and how we take that critique as match officials. And I think this is a very important issue for football in general, is that if a club and a manager, a team, has got a problem with a big decision like this, it isn't about the fact that they got it right or wrong. It's about being able to own that particular decision and being able to talk to someone and say, do you understand what this means in a game? Here we are, we got 50 minutes gone. And we've got 50 minutes gone, and if that had been allowed, that would have really, really changed the game. One of the things that's really important is that when you do own a decision, whether it's right or wrong, it's having the facilities, a club, to be able to go back to the FA or the competition and say, look, this happened. What sorts of training are you giving these match officials? What you find is, particularly at that level, they don't get an awful lot of training while they're there. And they certainly don't get enough training coming through as assistant referees to get there. A lot of people are pushed quickly. Not saying Stacey is being pushed quickly at all, but she's obviously a very accomplished assistant referee. I know I've seen her myself. She's a quality match official, but we can all make mistakes. But I just think the learning here for the FA is that these sorts of levels of communication between a club and the governing body or someone working for the governing body is really crucial. And those graphics. Who did those graphics for you, Jerry? The circles?
Dave Phillips, who he's a volunteer at the football club, and he's amazing. He does all our post-match stuff that's loaded onto Huddle as well. So I keep saying to him, he should be in the full-time game somewhere because the quality of his work is fantastic. So he'll help us out with a lot of things. I've got my own analyst as well, but he'll help us out with a whole heap of things around set plays, not just
big up to him. That's really good graphics, which really helps us explain the decision. So when this ends up, I talked to the referee Ross. I know him really well. I think he's a really good referee. Again, we can all have our blips and stuff like that as a referee or as an assistant referee, but I don't think we can lay any blame at Ross here. If we are going to say blame, but the responsibility for this decision. If you did it the other way around, Jerry, if he went, actually, I can see, and he called the offside and not the line-out, he just couldn't sell that decision, could he? Mm-hmm. So it's fair to say that it's got to be the assistant referees.
And the biggest thing, like I am as a coach or a player, is reflection and learning. And what do we get back? So Stacey, actually, on the day, she was very, very good. Very good. So I'm just using this incident in isolation because
thanks, mate.
It's so key and it's so important to us. But my bet afterwards is, so like, people have challenged me and say, well, you lost that game, so what do you do? What's your reflection? What's your learning after that? Will there be loads in that game where I'll go, we could have done better than this, and I could have done better on the side for our team than that. I don't get anything back in regard of what the officials have been doing afterwards. So it'd be good for me as a manager or a coach to go, well, actually, they looked at that, Jerry, and they've really spent a lot of time on it. And now they're looking at things like Mike's talk about, well, the body shape of the bloke taking the corner, and actually the team itself, the opposition, talking. And I can see the number 8 was in the back post. One of the defenders goes over to him and he's almost having a conversation, saying, "You've come out too late." So I can see all that. I can see all that happening. And there's a good example that I said to the boys off air before I came on. We played Slough sort of a couple of months ago, and we had a blatant penalty decision turned down. And it's similar on the side. I was adamant that we'd got a penalty. It wasn't given to us. And the player wasn't booked, so the striker wasn't booked, so it may have looked like a dive, but I knew it wasn't. It's full contact. And the referee said to me afterwards, he said, "If I've got it wrong, Jerry, I'll admit I've got it wrong, and I will apologise to you." I said, "Well, that's great." I said, "It doesn't affect now the result. We actually went on to win it." I said, and it doesn't affect that at the time, but that'd be great if you give me some feedback afterwards. I haven't watched it. Well, we never get any communication via phone calls, really, or texts, and I was at a game sort of 3 weeks afterwards watching Dorking versus Maidstone with my assistant. And as the warm-up's going on, the officials are warming up and the two teams are warming up. And then Jim says, "Oh, the ref's coming for you. He's coming for you. He's walking towards you." I was thinking, well, this can't be a good thing. And I'd forgotten who the ref was, I'll be totally honest. Well, that was the referee from Slough, and he pulled me down to the side of the pitch. He said, "Jerry," he said, "I always said I'd apologise if I got it wrong. I got it extremely wrong." He said, "I'm so sorry." He said, "But I have learned from it. I've watched it back and I can do better from it next time." Well, that's fantastic. So that respect level between both of you goes up. Thanks very much. Doesn't change anything decision-wise. Same with this. We'll never change anything. But if I got a little bit of feedback from it, knowing that Stacey's looked at it and Ross has looked at it and gone, "Do you know what? We could have probably thought about that. The stuff we're discussing," I think that helps all round.
And I think it's on the FA as well to be able to give you that conduit to be able to go somewhere and just say, "Look, blah blah blah. Here's where we are. Basically, what can you do to stop this happening again?" And we always say the FA and the county FAs as well, lower down, they don't get questions enough about stuff like this. They're sending referees out. Some of them are going through the system really well. Some of them cope with it really well. Some of them fit in, no problems, and keep going. Some naturally struggle, like players do, mate. And you always hear that expression, don't you? It took them a while to get used to the Premier League. Some of these players, you get that at every level of football as a match official. Yeah, and I think it's not fair on them. And I know, like I said earlier, I know Stacey's a top draw match official and she's got a great future ahead of her. But I think all match officials at that level need more training, proper practical training. Don't blame COVID, because they haven't had this training for ages, the FA. More practical training and engage clubs. They're always talking about, it costs us a few bob to hire facilities. If the FA went to a club and said, "Listen, Jerry, we're going to have a training day down at your grounds. You give us the ground free. You can come down, have some input, meet and greet." Well, happy days. Absolutely brilliant. But they just never seem to do it. And to evidence it, Nathan and we do these managers forums. We've talked about them before, where we'll hire a club and we put some food on and we invite managers down. And Jerry's been down. And it's so productive, Jerry, isn't it?
Yeah, no, really good. No, it's you get to talk about this stuff, that you get down to the nuts and bolts of what a game of football's about and how you're feeling. It's all about a game of football. At the end of the day, is chaos. I say it as a coach. Nothing in a game of football is. You can say you're tactically set up and you know how a game's going to go, or you feel like you know how a game's going to go. No referee, no assistant, no manager and player really knows how that game's going to go. So it's going to be. That's what it's about. It's the beauty of the game. No one knows what's going to happen at Marine versus Tottenham. Don't know about these key moments in the game when they're going to happen. And all we're trying to do is train us all, or prepare us all for that game of football. And it's not. We talk about training players and training coaches. So I've got to go through my coaching qualifications. I have to adhere to a certain amount of CPD hours throughout the season and constantly check myself and reflect and upskill myself. And I know it's the same for the very top referees, but these ones, they're missing out on that. And things like CPD events, I love. I've done it for supporters, because what we hide in, there's nothing we're hiding. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. So I invite fans to come in and watch my coaching sessions and listening to the detail I'm going into in a coaching session so that they can then familiarise themselves with it. So on a Saturday, look and they go, that was what he's trying to get across in training. And if referees had come and done that with us, and Scott Jackson's a good example, he did offer, and COVID stopped it, but he offered to come in the summer and come and talk to us about the new rulings and talk to us about football in general, just have a chat with the players and staff. All that sort of stuff is invaluable.
We've been doing it for a while, mate. We've been doing it. We go to clubs, and sometimes clubs will say, look, we're getting loads of players' books. We've got loads of chairmen have come to us as a charity and said, look, we've been told by the FA, we get X amount of cautions, we're going to get a £1,000 fine or this, that and the other. And so we go in, and we've done it with loads. Bolton Rovers was one. They had a really poor discipline record a few years ago. We went in, sat down with the man. I think it was Tony Ricketts was the manager then. He was a feisty manager to deal with. But he invited us in, and we loved it. We sat down with players, and we said things like, do you know what? Do you think you're number 3? I bet you've got 5 cautions this year. They go, hey, how does he know that? I said, do you realise that we don't talk, we talk to each other? We'll say, listen, their number 5's a pain in the ass. You know, you get hold of them, don't book them, but try and manage them earlier. Even Hungerfords, who were on this clip here, we recognised, Scott Jackson was one of the ones picked up on it. We recognised that when they're winning, they'll take a throw in, and they'll purposely don't let it come in. They throw it right down the line, off the pitch. And they normally do it right in front of the technical areas, which can get on the nerves of the other team. Now, this wasn't, we've seen it once, this isn't, definitely, we've seen it loads of times. It's an active ploy by Hungerford for whatever reason. It's just a ploy they use. Good club, Hungerford's, I've been there, really good club. But these are the sort of things what I'm on about, not the fact that Hungerford's got this ploy where they throw the ball down, it doesn't come in, so it's wasting time in real terms. But it's about like engaging with clubs to recognise things you can learn from. And that's what we're all about. I'm not sure the FA really, really want clubs and referees to engage. I don't know why people have suggested it's because if you get on with each other more, you get less cautions. And if you get less cautions, the county FAs get less money. I'm not saying that, but I know other people have said it. I cannot think, and Anthony mentioned it on our last episode with Chris Hull from Nationwide, who sponsors the Respect campaign, about having events, put an event on, and invite everybody, invite managers, secretaries, players, referees. Let's all go in there and let's all mingle and learn from each other, and don't slag off each other. Learn from stuff like this. This is something that's a mistake, but the ramifications of the mistake could be quite significant if we don't recognise that. So we all own it. Referee owns it, assistant owns it, club own it, FA own it. And that's what this is all about.
Well, there needs to be a culture change within the FA, because you look a few episodes ago in the final whistle, and we invited a lad called Nathan Tansley on. And what happened with Nathan was he was the assistant referee in a penalty shootout for a cup final or a cup semi-final, and he was line judge. Someone, as they do, were filming it on the phone. The penalty hit the bar, bounced behind the line, bounced back out. Nathan said no goal. And everyone kicked off at the time, but they carried on the game, and the team that had scored the goal ended up not progressing through to the next round. The clip was uploaded to Twitter. He then saw it and said, I've dropped a bollock here. I'm really, really sorry, but at the time I genuinely thought that hadn't crossed the line, and I'm really, really sorry that it affected your club in this way. And all of the feedback on Twitter for him as that match official who was apologising was brilliant. They said, fair play, Nathan. Well done for admitting your mistake. Well done for apologising. This goes a long way into making relations between the clubs, the managers, the coaches, the players and referees so much better. We invited him on here to talk about this, and then the FA said, no, Nathan, don't do that. Don't talk about it. Fine, you've gone on Twitter. We can't delete that tweet now. It's gone really well, but it may not have gone. Please don't do anything more to do with talking about incidents during your match in the public. And then didn't they use the phrase something like, because once it's out there, and it may be used against you. In some way, somehow, that admitting a mistake, like, referees do make mistakes, and we have to acknowledge that it happens. We're just as human as the players, as the coaches, who also make mistakes. It's part of the game. But this culture of they're doing the best, we appreciate that, but let's not talk about their mistakes. Or if there's a mistake made, let's not acknowledge it. Let's just move on, because in a few weeks' time, someone else will make a bigger mistake, and that'll be the hot topic of the day, and then we'll just ignore that. I mean, look at the media now. They've only just released a statement from Michael Oliver talking about the Virgil van Dijk injury. And that happened ages ago, but the statement comes out now as a distraction for probably some other stuff that's going on. It seems to me like the media department at the FA have just got it all wrong, and it's actually hindering the relationship between referees and the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean, this is extreme. Would we ever get to a point where an official after a game, post-game, could come and do an interview, talk about how the game's gone? And
we would love it. We'd absolutely love it.
I have to do it after every game, and I enjoy doing it. And I'm quite. Martin's watched my interviews, and I like to think I'm brutally honest, whether we win, lose, or draw. But there's also, I think there's a big fear factor. I mean, I'm constantly thinking now to myself, should I put this on Twitter? Should I put this clip on there or not? Because straight away you get Hungerford fans, or maybe some Hungerford players going, sour grapes, Jerry, you've lost the game, come on, da-da-da-da. But without us all, the biggest thing in all this is without us sharing this information, we're never going to learn and we're never going to get better. So whether it's me as a coach, my shape was wrong, the system was wrong, the team selection was wrong, whether it was a player's decision at the time was wrong, or an official, without any reflection and learning, we don't get better. And that's fact, that's life. You're not going to. So we're taking that, by walking on eggshells constantly, I think we're taking that away from these officials learning.
And you won't use this routine again, will you? Now that everyone's going to be talking.
Well, I'll set up to use it, and it'll be something totally different.
Yeah,
so,
fair play, mate. Fair play. Can we just lose the clip from the screen, Nate? Obviously, COVID. I was very surprised when I visited your grounds. It was on the morning of match day, and was all COVID compliant and everything else. And I looked through the window, and I could see how you're set up now, where the players get changed away from the dressing rooms. And the commitments and the way the game's changed pre-match for a lot of people in football, but your level of football particularly, it's just a massive change. Your game day now, mate, isn't it?
It's huge, and it does get to the point where you've this home and away advantage as well. It's not really there now, not just on the fans front. So, for instance, at Tottenham Park, we no longer change in our changing rooms. So when you turn up as an opposition, you can now change. The whole red zone for an opposition is the home dressing room, the away dressing room, and the medical room. And they get to come up. And when I spoke about Anfield and walking up through the steps, Tottenham's very similar. You walk up steps onto a level pitch, and that's part of your experience of playing at home in Tottenham Park. And I've got this is Bath City badge as you come down. And we've got the Bath City way up in the dressing room. So I've had a sign put up, and there's certain things which the Bath City values and beliefs and bits you should be thinking about if you're representing us on a Saturday. That's all in there. We don't get to see that. We're up in a bar now, so we're in a sponsors lounge at the Tottenham Park, and we come out of the bar down into some main stand steps through the terracing onto the pitch. So yeah, you're losing a lot of that match day experience as a player at home now. And in fact, if you're coming away, you probably get a bit more, but there's no consistency in that. So you're going to some grounds, and I spoke to Nathan before we come on air, and I said, we're going to some, and unfortunately some teams are using it at their advantage, and they're putting you in, they're not adhering to the COVID protocol, and they're putting you in small dressing rooms. And, I wouldn't name clubs, but we've been in dressing rooms where it's 8 members of staff, 18 players, all in a small dressing room before a game. And that just shouldn't be happening, because we all know outside you're pretty safe-ish in 11v11, but it's the indoor bits where this new variant's spreading so rapidly. So yeah, it's a lot to get your head around on a match day now when you turn up for a game of football.
I think we've talked about, we haven't talked about it on here, but we certainly saw in the media before Christmas, Neil Warnock obviously talking about the situation that Stoke put Middlesbrough in when they visited the Stoke City Stadium, as I'll call it. I'm not going to name any sponsors. I think it was just before Christmas, and he said it wasn't fit for a pigsty. So I think that you look at that and you can see that it's absolutely happening. Even at the professional level in the Football League, as well as at all the levels. So I would imagine that probably every team at some point will visit a ground where they've tried to do that. And I think that obviously you're touching on not having the home advantage and things like that. I saw a championship referee talking recently about how he feels that he misses the crowd because the crowd almost keep him alive in the game. He feels that his concentration levels in the last quarter of the game, for example, are dipping because he's been concentrating so hard throughout the first sort of 3 quarters of the game that he starts to mentally tire. Whereas what a crowd would do is keep contesting decisions right to the very end, particularly if the game's very close, maybe 1-1. And the crowd contesting every decision keeps a referee on his mettle, keeps him alive, keeps him sharp. And that's what he's sort of missing, and that's why they want the crowd back. So I think it's a really, really interesting situation for everybody in this situation we find ourselves in now.
And also, I've got to say, we for officials, people forget them on a match day, turning up. They need to feel safe as well. So we've given them their own facility. As they come up the stairs at Tottenham Park, they go off to the right. They don't use their change room. They go off to the right, and they've got another sponsors lounge to themselves, social distance. And they come out a different section of the stand and onto the pitch. So even little things like team sheets, that's another thing probably that's overlooked. That's where you get that opportunity to maybe build a relationship and understand what sort of person is going to be refereeing. And likewise, they'll get to sort of work out how we are and what we're about. You have that little informal conversation. Some want to talk more than others. Mm-hmm. But you're missing out on that at the moment because it's very limited. It's almost asking secretaries just to go and give the team sheets in, and you don't get that little bit of spiel. Whether that spiel before is, I often think it's read out of a book, and it's not. It's no meaning to it sometimes, a spiel. And I've had some will say, look, the score, Jerry, just F off basically before a game. So you're missing out on that as well. So there's loads of things that are affecting players, coaches, and more importantly as well, officials. Leading into a game, I'm sure of it. If you speak to them, like you said there, Nath, it's completely different.
Yeah, it's one of the things maybe before we wrap up on a positive note. Last season, got through to the playoffs. COVID hit. You had a great campaign which raised money because obviously it's a huge expense to get a game on in the playoffs during COVID and all the stuff that was a really exciting part of the year we're going on then.
It was. Like I said, the previous season we finished in the playoffs as well, missed out unfortunately in that one, and then we got in the playoffs again last year and then curtailed 3 months waiting to see whether actually the playoffs were going to happen. I had to fight tooth and nail just to try and make sure as a football club we could go into it, and the financial implications around that were key. So we set up a crowd fundraiser, which is always very delicate because everyone's struggling during COVID, and back in the day then when businesses weren't sure how things were going to go, and still we're in it now, we would have thought that. But we raised over £50,000, which is immense. We had to go through a stream of testing ourselves. We had COVID tests done privately at cost as well, so that came as a cost to get ourselves in the playoffs. And of course, we got to play at Tottenham Park with no fans. And we lost to Dorking on the day. We tried to do everything we possibly can to make it feel like a game or a home game or a competitive game. We sold head and shoulder shots. You've seen them at other stadiums. So we've got an old terrace at Bath City right the way around, sort of two sides with the crash barriers. So we hung off head and shoulder shots, were sold, done brilliantly by a local company. And we tried to make it as competitive a game as you wanted in a playoff eliminator. But unfortunately, we weren't good enough on the day. I have to hold our hands up. We just weren't. And we missed out. And then this season, we found it really difficult. This is probably the most challenging time I've had as a manager since I've been there. A lot around team cohesion. Players turn up for training. They're not allowed to go into a room together. They have to get out of their car. Come on, get a temperature test. Go on the training field. We train. We get back in a car and they go. They fill out questionnaires. We do as much as we possibly can to adhere to the COVID protocols. We train at Bristol City's Academy, at Filton College SGS. So it's a good facility. But like I said, the interaction of the players is very minimal. The only interaction they really get is on a coach on away trips. But we found a little bit of form of late, albeit we lost to Hungerford. We've got a really exciting game against Peterborough Sports in the FA Trophy on Saturday at Tottenham Park. We're all looking forward to the opportunity to go into the last 16 of the FA Trophy. And a league campaign, which is nearly 30 games still left to play. When we get these games played, God knows we could be going into all sorts of summer months, which obviously have a knock-on effect to the next season. But we have to prepare like we're going into it. It's, in all honesty, do I feel safe going to play football at the moment? Probably no, if I'm going to be totally honest. But until I'm told otherwise, we'll do everything we possibly can to prepare properly, get the team prepared properly, help them and support them mentally as well. You have to think about that. Other players, how are they going into it? Some of these young lads, are they going into it really feeling safe, like I've just spoke about there? But we'll do everything we possibly can to make sure they are. And then when it's kick-off time, it's kick-off time, and we have to give it everything we possibly can to try and compete in the league and try and get ourselves up the table.
Can I ask you about? I watched the documentary about Harrogate Town, the way that they were reacting to the way the layoff was in the National League last season. Obviously, they were successful in getting into the Football League through the eliminators, and the same situation that you had in the National League South. But what really grabbed me was that this was following Simon Weaver, the manager, about this documentary and everything like that, as they were going through that process. They were obviously told what the National League, I'm sure in exactly the same way you received the information, the National League told them what was going to happen. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to bring an end to the season, because I understand there was a lot of uncertainty as to how they were going to restart that and how that process was going to work. And they actually started training in groups of 6. And then I think after about 2 or 3 weeks of them doing that, they got a call from the National League saying, "What are you doing? We haven't given you any permission to do this." And they had to stop. And so one of the questions I want to really ask you is, one, because in my opinion, as an outsider looking in, I'm thinking, right, well, actually, those couple of weeks that they did do is what probably helped them get up, because their opponents weren't doing that. I think they played Boreham Wood in the semi-final, and then I think obviously they played Notts County in the final. Yeah. And I think their opposition wasn't doing that. But from a safety perspective, because the players haven't trained maybe properly for games and things like that, was that right? And also my question is, do you think that if you had been able to train them maybe in the way that they did, then that would have helped you get through like they did?
Well, yeah, undoubtedly. We're a part-time club. We're not a full-time club, so we couldn't put on any individual. I'd love to have stuck on some individual bespoke training sessions for unit work or individuals, which I know Weaves quite well at Harrogate. I've done some license work with him, and I know they would have done it properly. But no, we didn't have a facility to go to be able to do that. We couldn't do it. Most of the boys work in the day, so you can't drag them out in the day. There was all sorts of restrictions at the time. It was unknown because it was the first stage of going into a lockdown and how that looked coming out of it. Yeah. We gave them all bespoke training sessions. We gave them individual programs to work on their fitness. But as we all know, without coming back into the real world and playing in contact with 11v11 and football fitness rather than just general fitness was lacking. And the other one which really affected us was I had five loan players that started in that 11. And of all 5 of them, we couldn't see them because they were at their EFL clubs. So we couldn't get them out to train with us. And once they came out, they had to stay out of their bubble at that club then and stay with us. So they were sat idle rather than, it's an advantage when we get them sometimes because they can train throughout the whole week and then come in with us Tuesday, Thursday nights. Had a detriment effect on that. So we were behind the 8 ball, if you like, in a lot of ways. Dorking, I know, got to train a few more days than we did. We did manage to get a friendly. I mean, that was really tricky. We managed to play Yeovil down at Hewish Park, but even that, really, there was protocols, but it wasn't done properly by both clubs because we didn't know. We didn't understand what it meant and how it looked. And even that night, I remember the official saying, "Have you been tested?" And I sort of said, "Well, yeah, we've had to." And he said, "Well, we haven't." So all these things were going on prior to that. So the preparation was not ideal. I'll never use it as an excuse, Nathan, because in the end it was 90 minutes of football. Would we have carried on and gone up? I really believe that. I thought we had a better squad, a better team. We had momentum before COVID hit, but 3 months break was never going to be ideal, and it had a massive effect on us. And actually, it's having an effect on me now because we missed out on 3 months of recruitment. So whilst I was preparing to go back into a playoff eliminator, all the other teams in our league outside the playoffs were recruiting for the next season, i.e. this season. Yeah. So all those targets that you were looking at and trying to hit on, you had to wait, because I didn't know if I was going to be in the National League or National League South. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what my budget was going to be. And we had to wait. And that hit us. So my recruitment started later. We only had 4 games in pre-season because we started later, because we had to give them a break. And pre-season was curtailed as well and cut short. So we saw the effects of that now. Up until this point, before we broke again, we was just starting now to get our fitness levels up. Team cohesion was starting to build, because it was so alien, where everyone coming back in, they weren't fit. Everyone was at different levels. We hadn't played enough pre-season games. And that's fact, because I'm not using an excuse. The last 2 seasons, we've finished in the playoffs and we've been successful with that. So now I think we'll have a really strong finish to the season, hopefully, because we're starting to see the fitness levels going up and the boys starting to build those relationships.
Well, all the best with it, Jerry.
Thanks. Yeah, all the best,
Jerry, best of luck.
All your players are safe. You had a couple of people who've been diagnosed that moved on all nice and safely. So it's before we go, final message to your fans?
No, listen, thanks for all the support remotely. They're trying to buy the streams. I know everyone's bored to death of Zooms and streams and online fitness programs and schedules and what have you. And I try to interact as much as I can with the fans and put some messages out there. I'm going to do a managers forum, online forum soon, just to spread some information and tell them where we're at and just see how they are, checking in with them really. We've got a lot of old fans. Stay safe, stay well. It's the most important time now. This is probably at the most crucial time of the pandemic, that everyone stays safe and well with the new variant. But really looking forward to the next time when I can see 1,100, 1,200 smiling faces, hopefully smiling, sometimes not smiling, at Tottenham Park, roaring the team on, because there's no better feeling as a manager is coming out at Tottenham Park on a really good Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock and hearing the roar of that 1,200 trying to cheer the boys on down that slope and bring back the good times of the football, because like fans, the game is not as it was. Just don't make no bones about it. It really isn't. But yeah, messages to stay safe. Thanks for supporting us all the way through. We are thinking of you. We miss you dearly. Look forward to seeing you back at Tottenham Park as soon as we possibly can. It's safe to do so.